my husband. And that's why I opened the mercantile store, because I got 7 other kids to feed, you know? So anything, you know? And come join in the fun. Okay.
New president of the Historical Society.
Yay!
Thank you so much for being here, guests and members alike. We just really appreciate you guys being here. Obviously, this is a no-cost event, but we always accept donations. What we're going to do now, if you don't mind standing with me, we're going to do, would you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you.
Pleased to connect with Chris Meineke, who does speaking on behalf of the Sons and Daughters of the Oregon Pioneers. And as you may have read in our earlier promotion, that association was formed in 1875, the Oregon Pioneer Association, formed in 1875, and to create one central organization from the several pioneer groups that had been active since 1850. And then that association became the Sons and Daughters of Oregon Pioneers in 1897 and incorporated in 1901. And, you know, along with many of the things that the historical societies do and the Daughters of the American Revolution and genealogy, all trying to preserve our history and share stories and inform the next generations. So we're pleased to have Chris come out today. So please help me welcome Chris.
I've been a member of Sons and Daughters of the Oregon Pioneers probably for about 15 years, but not always active until after I retired. And so I'm going to basically give you a brief history of the Sons and Daughters of the Oregon Pioneers, and we call it Sdlp for short. How many of you are native Oregonians?
Yeah.
Woo! How many of you think you have pioneers, relatives who came across on the Oregon Trail? Not a whole lot of you. Okay. In 1873, there was a growing desire on the part of many of the early immigrants who settled in the Willamette Valley and other parts of the Oregon Territory to organize an association to collect the stories related to the pioneers and early history of the territory, to gather their archives, to keep their information together. This became more critical as the immigrants began dying. They put out a call to all the pioneers to come to a meeting to be held at Butteville, Oregon. The organization was effected on October 18, 1873 by adopting a constitution and electing an executive board. The first annual meeting of the pioneers throughout Oregon was in Butteville on the 11th of November. The second annual meeting, reunion of the pioneers, was in Aurora, Oregon in 1874. And I have some pictures of that first meeting.
Wow.
And so I will pass these around. And if you go to the Aurora Museum, you will see that picture on the wall in the museum. And a lot of people go to that museum to see if they can find their relatives. So that is actually the second meeting of the Oregon Pioneers. It was resolved by the association, this was the Oregon Pioneer Association, that June 15th as the anniversary day for the reunions of the pioneers. So they would always have a picnic or some kind of gathering on around June 15th. It is also today the time of our newly elected officers take position. So we keep some of the history by keeping some of the dates. After the 7th annual meeting, it was discussed to extend the membership to the children of the pioneers. At the 9th annual meeting, a new name for the Oregon Pioneer Association was adopted, and it was called Sons and Daughters of the Oregon Pioneers. Along the way, membership was extended to anyone who had ancestors in Oregon prior to 1859, when Oregon became a state. This included pioneers who traveled by ship. This included mountain men, missionaries, adventurers who arrived and settled in Oregon Territory. It also includes Native Americans. And we have had several Native Americans in our group. One was Chief Snyder and his family. This is a sort of a poster, and I had Native Americans from the Shamawa Indian School come up and do traditional dancing at our banquet one year. We currently have close to 900 members. We have no physical facility. We have 900 members throughout the United States and a few in Canada. And we are working very hard on building a website. Well, we have the website, but building information that people can go into and research their ancestors. So that's kind of a cool deal. A virtual building. We just don't have a physical building. The purpose of our organization is keeping the spirit and memories and stories of our forebears alive for future generations. A primary goal of Sdlp is preservation and restoration of the pioneer-related history sites via contributions from our organization. How do we accomplish this? Sdlp has provided funding to small museums such as Oregon DAR Newhouse Village, Fort Dallas, and if you've never been to Fort Dallas, it is the biggest treasure museum in Oregon. And it's older, they say they're older than the Oregon Historical Society. The Philip Foster Farms, the Caples House Museum, Sherman County Historical Society. So we have given usually $100 to these organizations. Our newest contribution was $500 for the Aurora Colony Traveling Exhibit in 2017. And here's a picture of it, and I'll pass it around. And this was a traveling exhibit that Aurora put together. And it was in the Capitol building, it was in several libraries, it was at Shampooey State Park, and I'm not sure where it is right now. It might be back home in the museum. But they wanted to have a traveling exhibit. Another one of our goals is rewarding the young generation. Sdlp has several major activities, including the annual state banquet held to commemorate Oregon's admission into the Union, and an annual picnic at Shampooey State Park. Each year, Sdlp selects a Miss Pioneer Oregon to represent Sdlp in parades such as the Rose Festival Parade, parades in Pendleton, and this year, it sounds like our Miss Oregon Pioneer is going to be in the Pioneer Parade in Brownsville, Oregon. And so I will pass some pictures around. This one I only have one of, and this is from 1930, Miss Pioneer, Oregon. This is our newest Miss Pioneer, Oregon, and she was just got elected, chosen out of her essays. at the banquet in February, and our banquet is called the birthday banquet. We celebrate Oregon's birthday, and so we always have the banquet as close to Oregon's birthday, which is February 14th. Here are some pictures of Miss Pioneer, Oregon last year in the Rose Parade. We've been around for a long time, and it's amazing to have an organization that was incorporated in 1901 to still be around today, and still operating with volunteers. There are also 5 board meetings throughout the year, and all members are welcome to the board meetings. 2 of those took place at Shampooey Park, and why it's so important. Go ahead.
Well, you know, me family,
Go for it. You're good.
Shampooey was where the movement for us to become a state started. And I only know that because I visited.
Okay.
And it was by 1 vote, if I remember.
2 votes.
2 votes.
I have a list of all the people who voted. And the vote had gone the other way, we would be very British right now. And I have friends who have people on both sides, have relatives on both sides. She's Native American too, so she had relatives on both sides. Plus, she had relatives that left town so they wouldn't have to vote. So that was kind of cool. How many know, have ever heard of Ewing Young? When Ewing Young died, there was no government in this country, around here. And so when Ewing Young died, that was what started this vote. Ewing Young's death on February 9th. And we celebrate his death, not his birth, because his death he had lots of land, no relatives, no ancestors, and so they didn't know how to distribute his land. And so they had some wolf meetings and some other meetings, and then the first meeting here where we took the vote. And so we celebrated, in 2009, the Oregon legislature passed Bill 625, which designated February 9th as Ewing Young Day. And not many people know that. Be it enacted by the people of the state of Oregon, Section 1, February 9th of each year shall be known as Ewing Young Day, to commemorate the Ewing Young's contribution to formation of the Oregon Provisional Government and aid in settling of the Willamette Valley. So after Ewing Young's death, they had quite a few wolf meetings, and then this. We had a big celebration for Ewing Young's 9th celebration in Newburgh this year. And then from Newburgh now, we celebrated his birthday, his death, and now we're going to celebrate Founders Day. And Founders Day takes place at Shampooey State Park. And you need to come out to Founders Day because all the members who voted yes, they ring a gong for. And the members of that person's family usually stand up and we cheer them on. So if you get a chance, Founders Day is totally open and free to everybody, and it's a fun time. And they also have gun salutes. after they're awarded. So this was a very, very important date and a very important vote. And Founder's Day is always the first Saturday of May. Now this is my great-great-grandmother who came across in 1851. And her husband came across in 1852. And they came across on the Applegate Trail. And there is only a few ruts that you can see on the Applegate Trail in all of Oregon. And they are at Myrtle Creek. And so I'll pass those along.
Chris, what brought your grandmother over before her husband
Okay.
or your grandfather? If you
Um,
don't mind.
That's a good question. My grandmother came, my great-great-grandmother came with her family, her mom and dad, and the rest of the family. Her husband died just before they left on the wagon train. So they had sold the property already, so she had nowhere else to go but to go ahead and go across on the wagon train. And she had her own little cart. She was the only woman in the wagon train that owned any property. And she had a son, John Chapman. And so she stayed with her mom and dad, and they settled the town of Riddle, Oregon. And then Mr. Merriman came in 52, and he lost his wife and one son on the Oregon Trail. And so they somehow got together and married and had 14 more children. And there is a cradle in the Medford Museum and a quilt that was made coming across on the Oregon Trail, and that rocked all the children. And I knew two of them, my great-grandmother and my great-great-aunt. So that was kind of fun. So does anyone have any questions?
Chris,
Yeah.
when is Founder's Day going to be?
The first Saturday of the month in May.
May.
May, first Saturday in the month. And it's a real, we do something different every year. When it was a big centennial kind of thing, a couple of years ago, they had a huge activity. We usually have a speaker from the Sons and Daughters of the Oregon Pioneers. People wear their pioneer clothes.
Are you saying I would be in style?
You would be in so much style. The Mountain Men came.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and last
There we go.
a couple of years ago, we had fur traders come down the river in their canoes.
Oh,
Wow. And so that is a fun thing to do. And Shampoo is not too far away. And it's one thing to celebrate Oregon becoming a state, but it's also very important that vote. And the picture that was passed around, there's a picture of the people who voted, and that picture is in the Capitol building. And you can see one person stepping across to make us the United States, having a government under the United States. In summary, it is probably one of the oldest historical organizations in Oregon, older than the Oregon Historical Society. Many of us have traveled sections of the Oregon Trail, and especially the Barlow Trail over Mount Hood. But via Sdlp, we continue to learn more about the people who traveled the various routes to the Oregon Territory. If you don't qualify for Sdlp, you can always become a friend. And we do have a friend application, and you're welcome on any of our activities. And I spent a lot of time on the Barlow Trail. And if you look in your brochure, you'll see where there's some markers up on Mount Hood on the Barlow Trail that we have put there years, 1930s. And that's what we're about. We don't have a facility. We just like to share Oregon history and promote Oregon history.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, here's some applications if anybody wants one. Fourth grade essay contest. There were some new markers on the Barlow Trail this year that were put there by OCTA, Oregon California Trails Association, and the U.S. Forest Service. I also volunteer at Monument Falls. So I work with the Forest Service too. So this is a write-up on some of the main markers on the Barlow Trail. And you all need to go see. Have any of you seen Laurel Hill? You really need, it's a really, really short walk just to see where the chute was. It is amazing that anybody lived.